I believe not only our work, okay, but life experiences, like we talked about again, are both building blocks of career progression. Okay, number one, learning from previous mistakes, and we mentioned that too. Having a better understanding of how industry works at different levels. I would say learning to deal with different people, not difficult. I said different this time, and different case scenarios.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wisenetix Podcast. I'm your host for today, Ricardo. I'm a key account executive here at Wisenetix, and today I have the pleasure to have with me Chris Mateo. Chris is the VP for Sales and Nutrition Consultancy at Standard Nutrition. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Ricardo. Great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. So I had the pleasure to meet Chris in person already. We've been in contact for a while now, and Chris has a very interesting story and a very interesting career progression, which we're going to be discussing here a little bit today. And just so our audience learns more about you, Chris, can you share a little bit more about you? Who is Chris Mateo?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from the Philippines, where I grew up and received my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and Masters of Science in Animal Science degrees from the University of the Philippines at Los Baños. And then I moved to the U.S. and completed a Doctor of Philosophy and Animal Science degree at South Dakota State University in Brookings, South Dakota. Since graduation at SDSU, I've worked for a contract research company, worked for a feed manufacturing company, at the time, the biggest ag cooperative in Canada, as well as at the time, again, the biggest animal health company in the world, prior to my role as Vice President for Sales and Nutrition Consulting here at Standard Nutrition Services in the U.S.
Awesome. And Chris, so I know your story a little bit, and the audience will learn soon a little bit of the cycles you've been through. And within your personal and professional life, what would you highlight as your top three achievements or experiences so far, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, for sure. A great question. I would say I would, from an education standpoint, I guess being able to complete 3 degrees, 2 of which are doctorates, would be an achievement, I guess. What I've learned from that is really just the basics, right? The technical foundation, research skills, and critical thinking that we need to actually navigate through life in general, but also through career. From a career standpoint, as you mentioned earlier, to be able to transition from a purely technical role, or roles, I should say, to business development roles and then to management roles. And 2 out of the 4 companies that I've worked for in North America for the span of like 2 decades. I would say, the number 3 achievements, you can actually group them into kind of one category, as a feather on my cap, if you will. And those would be, being invited to be part of the ownership group of a feed company in Canada. Also, I was given an opportunity to be on the executive committee of the National Board of Directors for the Animal Nutrition Association of Canada, as well as a past president on the Board of Directors Cooperative Research Farms. In case you're not familiar with Cooperative Research Farms, it's an international research partnership here of prominent feed manufacturers that actually service livestock and poultry producers, as well as equine owners as well, that allow the members of this group to share in the direction of a multi-million-dollar annual research budget, and then transfer that, the latest nutrition technology to animal agriculture. So the learnings from that, I would say, from running, acquiring, even selling a business, I would say capital investment, economics, and the importance of geopolitics. So you can see there's quite a few learnings as you go through what I call my achievements, or just experiences from an education career and I guess feathers on my cap standpoint.
Awesome. You've done a lot, and through all of those things you experienced, you probably, I don't know if you wonder that, but that's a question that we always ask to our guests, is like, how would your parents describe this? How would your parents describe, well, not your whole career, but what you do today?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess my parents have a little bit of a similar background that I have, both academically and professionally. So I think they would have a pretty good understanding of what I do. as they've gone through similar roles during their careers. So my parents both have PhDs in animal science from University of Missouri, and they both work in academia and industry, in the Philippines. So I guess their description of what I do would be fairly accurate for sure.
Okay, that's new for me. I didn't know. Usually,
Yeah.
usually parents they're not 100% on top of things, and of the work and career of most of our guests here. But it's interesting to see. So it's a family thing. You earned that.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of my brother's kind of in the same field as well. But my sister actually she's a medical doctor. She's a pediatrician practicing in the States. But everybody else in the family. So my parents, myself, my brother, were both kind of in the agriculture industry, and have backgrounds in animal science and veterinary medicine. So again, with the exception of my sister. So, but other than that, it's all good.
It's in the blood then.
Yeah.
And Chris, so as you previously mentioned, you started with with a focus on your education in academia, technical learning, let's call. You've been through multiple companies in the biggest nutrition company in the world, right? All tech, and through all these positions and companies you've been through, you started in a technical position, you moved to business development or commercial side of things, and then you end up doing some management on a management roles, right?
Correct.
What motivated you to do this transition to go through this path?
Yeah, so I would say that with the different companies that I work for, and I can go through kind of the different roles within the different companies, but I would say that the motivators for transitioning would be all the same. So let me go through the company. So for the contract research company that I worked for, started as a director for clinical studies, then moved up to operations manager, and then eventually chief operations officer. The feed manufacturing company that I worked for, I started out as director of nutrition for Western Canada, then moved over to general manager for the Northwest region. And the Northwest region for this particular company oversaw Alberta, Saskatchewan, as well as Montana in the US. And then eventually becoming a managing partner for the whole business, for the whole company in Canada. When I worked at the biggest ag cooperative in Canada, my role there was senior director for innovation for livestock. So what that meant was leading the nutrition R&D innovation groups for all species across Canada, technical role, right? And then the next portion there, when I worked for the biggest animal health company in the world at the time, again, was business unit director for swine, poultry, and aquaculture for Canada. So again, as you mentioned there, moving from a technical role eventually to business development and management positions, it's very evident, I guess, as I transition through within the companies and through the companies I mentioned. So as I mentioned, I guess from all of what I mentioned, the motivators that I have for those transitions within the company and the different companies are all the same. Okay. So one would be basically my passion for the ag industry, which even back in the Philippines when I was there, I had passion for the ag industry. The opportunity to contribute more to the business, and really just the career goals of growing professionally and impacting change. So those would kind of be the umbrella of motivators for me to actually navigate through the different roles in the different companies.
So, Chris, all the companies you worked at, and they are, in animal health, animal nutrition, meat production, and all of that. And your background is animal science and animal nutrition. I'm
Yes.
sure that this knowledge and experience you acquired through your, studies, they helped you across the different challenges you had in your career. But can you share a little bit more on how this animal science background played an important role in your career progression? And if you could share some examples of how you used your knowledge, your technical knowledge, when you were in a management position or in a commercial position.
Okay, so sounds good. So let me start by saying that my background in animal science and nutrition, I would say animal health too as well, as in it still is the backbone of my career. Okay, so it's still there. And I'm just blessed to actually have worked and currently working in industry and for a company. Okay, that's 110% fit. It's 110% fit to my background. So that's really good. So if I go back to the contract research company that I used to work for, so when you talk about grad school, one of the things that they teach there is research and experimental design. So the background of that, when you look at product development, when you look at product evaluation or validation, you need to actually construct research studies, right? Research studies, so experimental design and all that stuff to actually do that, right? So when you talk about product development, evaluation, validation, experimental design, and research background would be very pivotal in terms of making that work and do it, properly. When you talk about looking at product efficacy and safety study development, when you look at proof of concept to commercialization, again, the research and experimental design background from grad school certainly would help you bridge those developmental gaps, and even looking at concepts and how to apply those in commercial setting. When you talk about tech transfer activities, kind of falling the same umbrella there. You're taking research background, you're taking experimental design, but then you're also looking at the applicability of those research studies in real life. And transferring that technology to industry also would require that type of a background. From a feed manufacturing company standpoint, a technical background can kind of support you in a lot of different ways, not only from the manufacturing of feed itself, delivery of feed itself, but even on the staff side of it too, right? So you've got onboarding and training, you've got mentoring staff, all these things, because it's a nutrition-based type business. Your background in nutrition would help you, train the people that you work with, in terms of the products or programs that you have that you want actually for them to actually sell or actually introduce into the marketplace. You would need that technical background to be able to try and, get them to that point that you'd be able to do that efficiently and the way you want it from a company culture standpoint too as well. And then you've got the marketing activities that come with marketing those particular products that you talked about there. So the technical background that you share with these individuals that are going to do the actual marketing. I mean, we play the role too as marketers as well, but that technical background nonetheless supports that effort in terms of making that activities in terms of marketing successful. I think, Ricardo, at the end of the day, one of the things that we all need to remember that as you gain experience through the years, your knowledge base increases with it, right? So as your ability to contribute more would also grow through those years because of those knowledge base that we just talked about there. So that means that all that experience, knowledge base, the ability to contribute more, that all fuels a career progression. So in essence, I guess in my experience, you become more valuable as a professional when you have a solid educational background, experience under your belt, and of course, an outstanding work ethic.
So, Chris, and as you had these different experiences, and again, with the backbone of being a technical person, when you were, progressing in your career, you probably had a lot of colleagues and people that were in, let's say, a sales position, but not necessarily had the technical knowledge for it. You even mentioned like the importance of your knowledge on in training other people and helping them to progress in their careers. How do you see like the main differences in people that are, especially I would say in technical in sales positions, commercial positions, when they do have this technical background? The reason why I'm asking that is that today I'm in a industry where I do not have like the background in the ag, but I do have the background in communication, and I see that when it comes to sales and connecting to customers and talking to them, that gives me a lot of advantage, right? How does it work in the livestock or animal health or animal nutrition business? How do you see the comparison of people in commercial roles that have this technical background versus the people that do not?
Yeah, so Ricardo, that's a good question. I think if I'm understanding you right, I guess hopefully I answer your question with the way I'm going to do it. But I would say that technical people and let's call it non-technical people, or let's call it commercial people. Okay,
Okay.
let's call it technical versus commercial. So they have two different profiles. Okay, so when you talk about profiles, I think I really believe that you have to have a specific profile to be really good as a technical person, and a specific profile to be more of a commercial slash sales type person. Okay, I don't think there's an advantage between one or the other because at the end of the day, if you look at the feed industry today, there are different roles for technical people and there are different roles for salespeople. Okay, and when you talk about tech support, that's why those commercial people need these technical support people because they do have the basic knowledge, they do have the foundational knowledge from a technical standpoint to explain the products and programs, to the customer. While the commercial, non-technical people deal with the business side of it, if you will, right? Managing relationships, managing the business side. Um, so I think there's a teamwork that needs to be had there. Now there are situations I would say that you wear both a technical and a commercial hat. Like I wear that hat quite a few times in my career, as you know, with a technical background, but also being involved in business and management as well. And so I have the luxury to be able to wear both hats. I'm not suggesting that being a hybrid is I'm good at both, but I can use my technical background to support my business efforts in growing the business. I will say that with your background there on the commercial side, there on the communication side, I would say I think it's really up to it's really getting involved in the industry that you want to be communicating with, if you will. I think it's really a matter of just learning, exposing yourself to the industry, and then you would actually use that to try and be better as a communicator in that particular industry. So there is no you can learn from a technical person, but the technical person can also learn from the commercial person as well. I've seen that happen so many times. Our director of nutrition, okay, at Standing Nutrition Services, I viewed him in the past as purely technical, right? But when you see him now in front of customers, he's getting that commercial vibe as well, if you will, and to a point that I'm thinking maybe this might be a good person to add more on the sales team too as well, not just as support, but being kind of a salesperson as well. So I think it becomes experience, time in the industry, learning. That all boils down to confidence in terms of trying to navigate all those things. So if you have that expertise as a communicator in communications, then all you got to do is add this technical and industry knowledge. Then I think that you would be transitioning into something a little bit more than you are now for sure, and you're going to be really good at it. So again, I just wanted to say that from a technical standpoint, there is no and commercial or sales, if you will, standpoint, there is no advantage of having one or the other because I think really at the end of the day, it's they're two separate roles. Or if you are just having one person doing two things, it's a good synergy. It's good teamwork. It's good synergy, and I think that's moving forward as we go. As we go moving forward in the industry today, I think you'd probably need both. So that is my ideal, sir. There is no advantage or disadvantage at all.
Okay, I think you got it right when you mentioned like, hey, it's a teamwork, and especially when you also talked about people's profiles, right? People, different roles, different position, different skill sets needed, and
Exactly.
different personality, right? And that actually brings me to the next question. So you've been through these challenges, right, of transitioning, and I imagine the first time you left the technical and started with commercial
Yeah.
might have been really challenging, and at the same time exciting for you. And you've
Mhm.
been through this a couple of times, right? Uh, First, in terms of commercial aspects, what were the main challenges you faced in those transitions? In the first one, in the second one, and what did you learn from these transitions?
Yeah, that's another good question there. I think really at the end of the day, when I look back there, it's you know, you talk about technical to commercial and to management. That leap from being book smart, okay, to street smart, if you will, that was one of the challenges there, right? You know, accepting what looks good on paper may not necessarily be implementable or realistic, you know, in the field. I guess realizing that there's other factors, if you will, other factors other than the obvious that need to be considered when you make decisions. One thing that I've learned there too is that as you change roles within the same company or business, you know, your objective and goals change as well. Your considerations as well as variables that, you know, for making those decisions would change as well. So as you increase responsibilities within the company, say for example, your accountability and the expectations of others go along with it. So this becomes really important to realize as your decisions not only have a huge impact in the company's bottom line, but more importantly, they affect people's livelihoods as well. So, as you mentioned in the previous question there and your comments after my answer there, I believe there are specific skill sets, like you said, and ideal personality profiles to be good as, you know, as at technical, commercial, or even management roles. But I think that, you know, wearing different hats, you know, if you will, can be a lot of work. I would say, you know, the other challenges there that I've faced is just managing change, you know, managing change and a sense of urgency in a positive way can you know, can become a challenge as well. I think really at the end of the day, there's a certain level of maturity in a person that you need to be able to you know, overcome or handle all these.
Hmm. Hmm. And would you say this are concepts that would apply to both the commercial and also the management? How do you see also the difference?
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Okay, and now thinking a little bit about skill set. I'm a communicative person in general, so that
Yep.
that made my transition to the from design and communication to sales not very hard, right? Do you think these are things? Well, you talked a little bit about it already, but how learnable are those type of skills? Do you think it's about exposing yourself to situations where you need to develop and learn and be more communicative, or is this something more like a you have you have the gift for it or you don't? um, how do you see this?
Yeah, you know, Ricard, let me tell you, depending on who you talk to, you get different answers to that. Some people think, you know, you need to be born with it, right? You know, some things can't be learned. You got to be born with it. I guess in my experience, I guess there's a little bit of truth to that to some extent, but I think for the mass majority of everything, I think it can be learned. Okay. I think what can't be learned is the ethics side of it, right? Because that comes with upbringing and all that stuff. But the skills and knowledge and all that other stuff, you know, that certainly can be learned. You know, when you look at some of the things that we consider when we're hiring people, right? You know, some of the top three things that we look at is passion, you know, background and education, background slash experience and education, and so you know, there's some other things too, but if I, you know, categorize those, you know, passion, background, and experience, and then, you know, education, passion always trumps the two. Okay. If they have two out of three, you go to the next level, right, of interviews and all this stuff. If you have one of the three, probably not. But if you have passion as one of the three, you're probably getting to that next level. In other words, if you do have passion for what you do, whether it be communication or, you know, whether what industry, I think the skill set that you need to get to that level of operating in a way that you're making an impact is it's something that you'd be, you know, that can be learned because you're passionate about it. So if you're passionate about something, you'd probably do anything, you know, that needs to be done to get really good at it, right? So in my mind, for the mass majority, I think it can be learned as long as you got passion and you've got that upbringing to actually provide that ethic that needs to fuel that effort to get better at it.
Awesome. Do you guys use any type of specific tools to map the personality and the profile of the people you're interviewing. For example, I don't know, there is DISC, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm very familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, here and do you use any of those tools? Do you consider those sort of things? How do you guys do your hiring?
Absolutely, absolutely. In different companies that I worked for, this disc that was one of them we used. But here at Standard Nutrition Services, we call it OAD. Okay, but it's the same thing, right? One thing about of these different profile testing surveys and things like that. I mean, they have different angles in terms of how they interpret your profile. But I think that the profiles themselves, whether it be colors or the letters or the numbers or all this stuff, they're in the same categories, but they just interpret what they mean in a different way. So I think for what we use OAD for is obviously screening particular candidates if they're a good fit for the role, right? Again, it goes back to the profile skill set, not so much skill set, but the profile of the person itself would need to match what we feel the profile should look like for a particular position. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. So, we've got a certain profile for really successful sales consultants, right? So if I rank the top 10 sales consultants that we have and I look at their OAD profiles, they're the top to top tier percentages of those have similar profiles. The middle ones and the lower tier ones, if you want to call it that, also have similar profiles. And so if we look at a candidate, say, for example, and we look at their profile as similar to the profiles of successful sales consultants, and we're applying, we're looking for a sales consultant type person, then obviously you'd probably have a better match, right? Whether it be a technical person, you've got a profile for good technical people. And so if a technical person is trying to apply for a sales position, those profiles may be just a little bit different, right? So, and depending on the background there, we may have to modify the expectations based off of that profile if that person's really good. So that's how we use, kind of the OAD, OAD process to screen applicants for certain positions. Now, when they're in the company, okay, we use the OAD profiles to try and help manage the person. Okay, so as managers, if I'm dealing with difficult people, say for example, or dealing with people in general, okay, sorry to make that example, but I could look at an OAD profile, so I have an understanding of how I need to be communicating with that person, how that person needs to receive information, how that person, what would be the effective management strategy to oversee that person. And I can see all that with the output from an OAD. So say, for example, if I just joined a company and I have no clue of who I'm dealing with because I have no experiences in terms of history with this people, new company, new team, all this stuff. All I need to do is look at the HR file, right? Look at kind of obviously I'd read up on their backgrounds and stuff like that. But an OAD or a DISC or anything like that, information would also help me try to communicate better with this person. So, in other words, I think you can use a tool to screen applicants for a certain position as they join the company. But once they're in the company, you can use these same tools to actually manage and work well with this person as well. So, that's how I would see kind of using these tools.
Awesome. Yeah, we do something similar here. We use a platform called Culture Index, which basically has the same objective, trying to map and understand the profile of the people who you're hiring or work for you, so you can have the best approach. Putting them on the right seat, and also understanding how you're gonna charge them, how you're gonna talk to them and lead them in the team. And for me, it's just beautiful because it's something quite new for me. As I was always focused on designing things and communication, I didn't have this 360 view of all those these things that impact our day, such as relationship with colleagues and others and leading teams. And for me, they just do magic. It's amazing the power that understanding the people in their profile can have over how you're leading them and how you're making things happen. There's a say, I don't know if that saying makes sense in English or if maybe it was translated to Portuguese, but like you should not judge a fish by its capacity of climbing a tree, right? So I think it's a little bit on the in this along these lines.
And I think you mentioned about Ricardo. You mentioned about 360. That just takes it to a whole new level, right? Because 360 is like you're involving people that you work with, your superiors, your friends, your customers. So they provide a 360 perception, right, of what they think you are, right? Which you might be blindsided in terms of I didn't realize that, but that's just a whole. It's a longer process. It takes a lot of time, but I think it's a very very strong tool, to kind of look yourself in the mirror and evaluate yourself, right? These tools that we use here, really, when we look at candidates, coming into the company, and also within the company too, as you work with them, really these tools are meant to, number one, make sure it's a perfect fit. Well, not so much a perfect; it's a good fit for the person wanting to actually come into the company. Because one thing you want to do is make sure you set these people up for success, right? Once they're, as they come into the company, but also while they're in the company as well, because we spend so much time, resources, and effort to try and hire these people, to try and keep them, maintain them, that you want to make sure it's not a waste of time for both sides. So I think these are great tools for making sure everybody, on both sides of the fence are successful.
I'm sure those are a few of the things that you learn as you transition to to
Yeah.
the management side of things and had to lead teams and people. And again, talking again about this repeated cycle. So technical commercial management, repeating it across different companies. Uh, how do you think you took advantage if you compared like the first time you went through all of that, then you did again in the second company and again and again? How did you take advantage of those learnings and if you could give us a few examples of like, hey, the first time I went through this, I failed here or there, and then I learned, and then I moved on. And can you give us an overview on that? How was this journey?
Man, these questions get tougher and tougher. Okay, I guess I believe not only our work, okay, but life experiences, like we talked about again, are both building blocks of career progression. Okay, number one, learning from previous mistakes, and we've mentioned that too. Having a better understanding of how industry works at different levels. I would say learning to deal with different people. Not difficult. I said different this time. And different case scenarios. These all factor in how you make decisions given whatever's in front of you, right? So for things that are cyclic in nature, once you've gone through it before, you're in a better position to tackle, that when it comes up again, right? So kind of makes sense. However, when you have challenges that are not cyclical in nature, if you will, then you would have to rely on your work experience, your knowledge base gained through the years that drive that critical thinking, that emotional intellect, etc., to really solve that problem and implement a strategy. So at times, you have to go with what your gut tells you too. Sometimes, it's not enough that you have all that, but sometimes it's the gut feel. It's a gut decision. I think this is right. So it's a culmination of everything, right? So as you transition from a technical role to a business role and then a management role, one thing that I realized through the years is that you step away from the science. Okay, you're slowly, so technical management and business development and management role, you're getting away from the science, right? You start off with purely science, but as you change that role, you get away from that. You're stepping away and away, so the science piece of your responsibility is less and less and less. Okay, and then what happens is you spend more time on people management. Okay, so your science goes down, then your people management and dealing with people goes up, right? So from transitioning from the technical, the management and business development and the management, right? So technical goes down, more dealing with people goes up. So that's kind of what I kind of noticed. And if we talked about profiles, right? So now my profile tells me that I lean toward the introvert side, right? So I'm more introverted basically. So you can imagine just the challenges there, right? So, and I guess typical technical people have that piece of have that little bit of piece of being kind of an introvert side, and then kind of the commercial and the salespeople have more of an extrovert side. So I'm transitioning to try and get to that extrovert side. So overcoming that really, it took time for me, putting myself out there like you're currently doing, right? Until it became natural. So dealing with, different people, became easier through time, but that's all built on experience. So really learning from your experience, I think, Ricardo, is key in a successful transition.
Awesome. Well, you're the living proof that communication are skills you can learn. Then, if you're an introvert, you communicate very well. So, I would not guess you were an introvert from the first time. So, congrats on that.
Oh, appreciate that.
and and Chris, now thinking about your current position, okay, you're VP, Vice President for Sales and Nutrition Consultancy in Standard Nutritions. Uh, what are the main challenges you're facing, or that you faced recently within this current position, and what did you do to overcome those challenges?
Yeah. Okay. So for one, most of my work experience in North America was in Canada. Okay. So
Hmm.
now I'm based in the US, where the industry climate and company culture, they're not the same, right? They're not exactly, they're same in some aspects, but for the most part, they're a little bit different. The current state of the swine industry right now has been more challenging than ever. We're currently having to deal with a whole new set of variables that are new to us, right? In fact, this morning I was just reading an article there by one of our colleagues here that just suggested that 2023 has been really challenging for the swine industry. In fact, they threw out numbers like pork producers from a pig per head basis per pig been losing an average for 2023, a high of $32 per head. Okay, that's a big loss per pig sold. So if you look at historical from an historical perspective, the highest loss in the last 20 years was $12, $13 per head. Okay, in the last 20 years. And this year is 30 to 32. Okay. So that's like 3 times more than the highest loss in the last 20 years. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what the state of the nation is, if you will, from a swine industry standpoint. So, unfortunately, we haven't really, fully recovered or overcome that, but we're going in the right direction. There was another paper this morning that says that 2024. The good thing about 2024 for the swine industry is it's going to be, the good news for 2024 is it's not going to be as bad as 2023. So again, we're not fully recovered from that, but we're going in the right direction and really optimistic about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think for me, the main challenge was really navigating a different customer base. Okay. So in Canada, I dealt primarily with Hutterite colonies. I don't know if you're familiar with Hutterite colonies, as opposed to traditional market segment or independent producers, if you will. Okay. So currently here in the US, I deal with both markets, not just one or the other. It's both markets. So how we would deal with Hutterites and independent producers are totally different. What's important to them, how they want to be serviced, if you will, products and priorities, they're not the same. So as such, within Standard Nutrition, we do have separate sales teams and nutrition programs for these market spaces. So, my exposure to the traditional market space has only been a little over a year. So my learning curve is a little bit steep. But again, how to overcome this thing is overcoming these challenges goes back to relying on your previous work experience, I guess the knowledge base, gained through the years that drive that, critical thinking, emotional intellect. We talked about that to really solve that problem or implement a strategy. So it goes back to putting yourself out there, learning as much as you can, learning from your mistakes, because, mistakes are part of learning too, right? So as long as we, learn from those mistakes, I think, we'd be in a better position to, kind of go through and navigate through those critical challenges and solve problems and implement strategies.
Awesome, beautiful. Chris, we're getting to the end of our conversation here. So we're going to start wrapping up.
Okay.
And just before we do, a question that I always like to ask is like, you have a lot of experience. So if you had to give a piece of advice to someone that is starting their career, if it's in a technical position, a commercial one, or a management one within the ag sector, what would that advice be?
Oh, there's so many learnings throughout the years, Ricardo. But I would say the one piece of advice for me would be before you embark on something or just make any decision for that matter, I would say do yourself a favor and make sure you invest a lot of time in the due diligence process, because that's going to just, give you dividends, in the long run. So make sure you do your homework, make sure you look into it, because it's, these big decisions or embarking on something just, exciting it always comes with something, right? So as long as you're well prepared, you know what you're getting into, that'd be a good step in the right direction. So do the due diligence, make sure you spend some time understanding it, looking at it. And I think you'd be successful. You're going to have less mistakes as you move forward. So, that's my advice. So make sure you do due diligence, invest that time in doing it before making any decisions.
Do the homework. Good.
Do your homework. Absolutely.
And do you have any books, movies, documentaries, podcasts, anything to share with our audience, to recommend to our audience?
Yeah, for sure. I really don't have anything specific to recommend other than your podcasts. I mean, you certainly get a lot out of the subject matter experts in a short period of time. And the thing there, the flexibility is you can fit it in at any time, and it's thought provoking, and of course it's educational. But since we're talking about a lot of transition, right? For those people that are in transition mode, if you will, as I just started my role as VP a little over a year ago, I guess the most recent book that I've read was entitled "The First 90 Days" by Michael D. Watkins. And this book offers, different strategies for conquering the challenges of transition, no matter where you are in your career. Okay. So it identifies the most common pitfalls new leaders encounter and provides tools you need to avoid them. There's a lot of, learnings of how to secure early wins. There's checklists in there, there's self-assessments, etc., to help in any situation. So whether you're changing roles within a company or changing roles with another company, I would highly recommend this book to help you with that transition. You can, read this over and over again because it doesn't get old.
The First 90 Days.
The First 90 Days by Michael D. Watkins.
Michael D. Watkins. Perfect. Okay, thanks for the suggestion. And the last question I have is, if anyone in the audience wants to reach out and to connect with you, where can find you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, other than a quick internet search, I'm on Facebook, but I'm on LinkedIn as well. On the company website, you can find me. If you want to reach me, you can also reach me via email at cmateo@standardnutrition.com. So cmateo@standardnutrition.com. We'll be more than happy to communicate with you via email. But yeah, if on a personal note, Ricardo, I do appreciate the opportunity to contribute to your podcast and hope that your listeners have picked up a golden nugget or two they can use as they navigate through their career paths. And I guess lastly, I just want to say, may you and your listeners have a meaningful holiday season.
Awesome. Well, I know I picked up your nuggets here. So I appreciate your time, and it's always great to connect and talk to you, Chris. Absolutely. So hopefully we can meet in person again soon. And for you that have been listening to us, thank you for your partnership and your companion. So we see you around. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.